and gentlemen, the 3 knockdown rule on Triller is in effect. I'm Steve Kim, joined by our Chuck Woolery, Mario Lopez, trying to make a love connection last week with Sinicia Estrada.
God, I was like, where are you going with that?
Big reaction.
I told you that was working. More on that later. Thank you to the Korean Cosell. We got Smoking Tim Frazier, Buffalo Knuckles, and
Tino on the edits. All right, a lot to talk about as always. Let's get started this past weekend. From the Grand Casino in Hinckley, Minnesota on ESPN+. It was a dogfight won by Isaac Dogboe. Split decision in 10 rounds over Joet Gonzalez, 96-94 in all 3 cards. 2 of them for Dogboe, who's now right back in the title mix. Mario, Joet Gonzalez, a slow starter. I thought it killed him.
You know, it's okay. I have many thoughts on this fight because I watched the fight and I thought the same thing. I thought the slow start, it being 10 rounds, was not good strategically. However, I thought he worked himself back into the fight where it literally could have been anyone's fight. It was a very physical, no pun intended, dogfight with both Dogboe and Gonzalez. They were inside a clean fight. The ref wasn't interfering too much. A lot of action, a lot of exchanges in between the trenches. I thought Gonzalez had the more telling blow with that sort of looping overhand right, and I thought he was able to kind of capitalize on some momentum there. But Dogboe worked himself back in. I thought his corner did a good job being honest with him, telling him how it is. Dogboe bit down on that mouthpiece, ended up having a little bit more in the tank that I maybe thought he did, thought he had, and let his hands go a little bit more. It was so even, Kim, that to me, that's the perfect definition of a draw as a fight. Had it gone 12 rounds, it would have been interesting to see if Gonzalez could have maybe had a little bit more in the tank. Because here's the thing that was the difference to me. He was the one that was going forward. He was the one that was still initiating the action by pressing. To me, I tend to lean towards that fighter. With that said, the exchanges were pretty even. Even the punch output, I think, was dead even. And so it was a very, very pick-em fight. No one should scream any sort of robbery. Honestly, it could have gone either way. I don't have a problem with Dogboe. I really would have liked the draw, to be honest. But I think the slow start killed him. I do think there's something to be said for Gonzalez being the one that was initiating the action throughout, especially from the midpoint rounds on. But Dogboe ended up showing that he's got a little more grit than we give him credit for, and you know, I don't have a problem with the victory.
I think this has to be said. Game ball to Smooth Barry Hunter, because he coaxed him across the finish line.
That could backfire, but he knows his horse. So yeah,
and he went to the whip and he said, "Listen, we got to get to the finish line." And all 3 scorecards, 10-9 in favor of Dogboe in the 10th, and that was the difference. So yeah, trainers matter. That's why they make the money they do. As for Joet Gonzalez, hey buddy, you know I like you, but in a 10-round fight, you want to give away 30% of the fight. Just look at this mathematically. That means in the last 7 rounds, you basically have to win 6. I'm sorry, in no other sport do coaches allow slow starts. There's never been a basketball coach that gets down 20-2 and said, "Oh, it's okay, we've got 40 more minutes." No. There has to be more of an emphasis from the trainers of a sense of urgency, and the fighters, they have to realize, I'm in a 10-round fight. I can have 1 feel-out round, can't have 3.
Sometimes that's just their style, and they can't help themselves. They need to assess the situation by getting the timing a little bit. Sort of, it takes them a minute to get their distance. Then there's the speed factor. It's just sort of the way it is. Chavez was infamous for that. And, I mean, obviously it worked out to his benefit. He knew how to adjust quickly. But it's unfortunate because I think if it was a 12-round fight, perhaps we don't know. And that's the thing. We'll never know.
Yeah, look, if you give me a speech and it says, "We got 3 minutes," I can do the 3 psychologically. Now, if you say, "All right, we got 3 more rounds," I'd be like, "Oh my God, 9 minutes?" I'm just telling you, this like Yogi Berra said, 90% of this game is half mental. And it is easy to get a guy across the finish line when you're saying you got 1 round to go, the 10th. But if you start adding 11 and 12, and I want to ask somebody, if this is a WBC eliminator, which it was, I think all elimination bouts should be 12 rounds, just
I
like
agree.
a title fight.
That's exactly. I agree with that. It was weird that it was only 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Especially with so much on the line in a fight of that caliber.
Taking a look at Isaac Dogboe, look, he's had some close victories against Blue Nose Lopez, and then it was Christopher Diaz in this fight right here. He's now the WBC #1. Here's the problem. You take a look at their new champion, Ray Vargas. Doesn't he have a lot of the same attributes, long and lanky, and also taller? Kind of like an Emmanuel Navarrete, who had his number.
Who did have his number, and ironically, Gonzalez had pretty good success against. So it's one of those things, like styles make fights. So yeah, it doesn't seem that, at least on paper, that Vargas will be an easy fight, and that will be 12 rounds.
Yeah, as for Joet Gonzalez, I know people are saying, what's his future like? Look, his future is he should be back on TV. He consistently makes good fights. He's fan-friendly, he's hard-nosed, he's rugged, he's a blue-collar guy, but that has to be a point of emphasis. Again, I believe his father trains him. I say, son, you get one feel-out round. You're not giving away the first third of a fight. It's small little fractions, but I still think Joet Gonzalez very much is in the mix, but he just has to get a little bit more to the back of the line. Moving on, this Saturday from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, it's showtime, and your main event, I guess in professional wrestling, they would call this loser leaves town match. Danny Garcia versus Jose Benavidez. Mario, let me set the stage here about how inactive both guys have been here. Danny Garcia, since 2018, he's only had 3 fights. In fact, he has not fought since Errol Spence, December of 2020. And as it relates to Jose Benavidez, since getting knocked out by Terrence Crawford in the fall of 2018, he only had a draw last year, 2021, against Francisco Torres. I'm sorry, this fight is a big meh.
You know what? I kind of like it.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of like it because
Really?
I think both of these guys realize where they are in their career and that they need this fight, and I think they're going to let it all hang out. And both guys, it come to fight. Benavidez, who I was seeing with his brother at Brick House lately, he looked in good shape. He had been sparring a lot. They got that nasty mean streak to him. Garcia, first time we're going to see him, or I'm going to see him at least at 54. Has he fought at 54 before?
No.
This is the first time, right? So, yeah. So, Garcia's first time. He's always had that great left hook, a lot of experience, former world champion. Like you said, I think he realizes with all the time off, a lot's on the line. I think with an impressive performance, both these guys are kind of back in the mix, at least on the scene, at least being on the scene. So I kind of like this fight, at least stylistically. It seems that on paper, it should be fun.
I like Garcia big. Look, I think the PBC politics, this is being set up for Danny Swift Garcia, who's been one of the franchise fighters. Mario, when you saw Benavidez at the gym, how was he moving around? Because since that shooting, when he was a civilian and something happened, he looked like a 3-legged horse that should be taken to the glue factory.
Yeah, he wasn't moving around a lot. He just looks big for that weight class. So, well, because his brother's a big guy too.
Oh.
So I don't know if that'll be a factor with, or it should be a factor with Garcia. But Garcia's a strong kid. I'm sure he's going to be sitting down on his punches for his style. I think it'll work well for him. I too would probably favor Garcia, but I think it'll be a good fight while it lasts. I think it should be a TV-friendly, fun fight.
You know, I was thinking about this earlier before we're taping, how time flies. It was a dozen years ago, 2010, when it was Jose Benavidez, who was this hotshot prospect. He was the guy that had that great amateur rivalry with Frankie Gomez. He was with Top Rank. Gomez was with Golden Boy. And it goes to show you don't know how these things are going to work out, because when they were at Wild Card under the guidance of Freddie Roach, he used to be there. A lot of people made a big deal about him. And I saw this fat, chubby kid that was always with him. Probably about 230 pounds back then.
Yeah.
David Benavidez.
His brother,
I
remember?
never actually knew that David Benavidez was a real fighter. I thought it was his younger brother.
Just trying to lose some weight.
Just trying to lose weight. Him and Andy Ruiz. I never actually really thought that they were boxers. And now you look, fast forward, it has been David Benavidez who's had this career, who's one of the elite 168-pounders in the world.
Isn't that
You
crazy?
just never know.
You never know. And yeah, they've had a tumultuous journey, to say the least. I mean, with the shooting, a lot of drama down in Arizona, too. Then they told me they moved up to Seattle.
Yes. Seattle.
Such a random,
Not exactly a boxing hotbed.
Not a boxing hotbed. It's such a random area too. And now they're sort of back and forth, and they train here in LA at Brick House. So I'm interested to see. But he seems focused from what I've seen. But obviously, There's going to be some rust to be concerned about, but should be, I think, a fun fight.
Yeah, also on this Showtime broadcast, heavyweight Adam Konatsky and bright young junior welterweight Gary Antoine Russell. We come back. We go to the Ask Mario and Final Flurries on the 3 Knockdown Rule on Triller. And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule on Triller. Steve Kim, Mario Lopez. We go to the Ask Mario segment of our fine program. Here's one from Ryan Longer. Interesting question. Which fight does more pay-per-view buys? Crawford versus Spence or Garcia versus Davis? And for the record, neither fight has been consummated just yet. Interesting question,
That is an interesting question. I would say Spence and Crawford still.
They're still more established.
Yeah, they're still more established because even though Garcia is very popular with a huge social media following, that doesn't necessarily transfer to pay-per-view buys. And a lot of the house at Staples Center was papered too the other day. So I think Spence and Crawford would have a bigger buildup and gain more momentum if once that officially gets signed. And I would think that would translate to more pay-per-view numbers. Would you disagree?
Yeah, both fights will do business, but Spence Crawford is the fight because these guys are more established. They've had more accolades. That if you ask the general sports fan in America, from East Coast to West Coast, everything in between, what's the one fight you want to see happen? It's probably Spence Crawford more than Tank Davis.
And I think the mainstream
and Ryan.
medium sports media would jump on.
Yes.
And they would create a little momentum.
Here's a question from Just Matt 24. If Vergil Ortiz gets past McKinson, and that fight's going to be in a couple weeks, who do you want to see him fight next? Mario, title shot. He's #1 in the BO. What are we waiting for here?
No, I know. He's ready for that. Look, I'm curious to see how he looks because obviously he had that struggle with the weight not too far back, and assuming he makes this easy. Because I don't know how much longer he can stay at this weight class. Assuming it's not an issue, then yes, absolutely title shot.
He's been #1 in the WBO for about a year. Doesn't necessarily make him mandatory till the sanctioning body says, hey, your time is up. Here's the issue, though. Let's say Crawford Spence does get made. Well, unification bouts trump mandatories. So now kids like Boots Ennis and Vergil, they have to get to the back of the line.
Yeah, there's a very short line for them, though. Yes. But nevertheless, and I think both of those guys aren't going to be hanging out welterweight too long.
No, they'll be at junior middleweight sooner rather than later. Here's one from Watson. What's the explanation for guys like Gabe Flores Jr. and Edgar Berlanga, young fighters that don't work on their obvious flaws? Mario, Gabe Flores, age 16, was the youngest fighter ever signed by Top Rank. Showed some early flashes, but last couple of fights, he's taken some thrashings, and Giovanni Cabrera literally knocked him down in the first 10 seconds of the fight. And this is the problem with Gabe Flores. He doesn't have great power, which is fine, but he's not nearly slick enough to get through it. And every fight now is like a beating at the end. It's tough to watch.
You know, both with Gabe and Berlanga, I think the problem when you sign kids at such a young age with a lot of hoopla and you've got a lot of people behind them telling them how great they are, they start to relax a little bit as far as their approach in wanting to continuing to get better in the gym. And what got him to that point and those solid fundamentals and continuing to improve, not all of them has a Canelo-type mindset where they always want to continue to get better. They start resting on their laurels a little bit, and the rest of the world keep progressing, and then it catches up to them for us all to see in the middle of the ring. Berlanga was a product of a guy who does have heavy hands, and he put together a nice little streak, but then I think started relying on that power a little bit too much and started getting and falling in love and drunk with his power and not wanting to continue to evolve. And then with the social media fame and you got guys like Fat Joe coming out, hanging out with you, that's going to stunt your growth. It takes a really tough guy mentally and psychologically to kind of assess the situation and keep yourself in check. We'll see if he can right the ship. He's still young, but he hasn't shown me that in the last couple fights.
Yeah, as it relates to Gabe Flores, I believe the Top Rank will probably be releasing him. It's a tough business. Doesn't mean his career's over. One thing I didn't like
about ice is business.
Yeah, look, it's not easy. But the one thing that both guys had, and I didn't like it, they started being really flashy with the jewelry. And they started, as the kids say, flossing.
Well, that's what I meant. Like, you started living, you got to stay hungry.
Like,
you got to keep that haggler mentality.
What are your priorities? Yeah. It's like, at the ACC Media Day, Mario Cristobal was asked about the Miami turnover chain. And he basically said, no, we're playing football. We're doing business. We're not doing that. Like, you could see how annoyed he was when he's asked about this. That has nothing to do with winning football games. And I just really am worried about his health because when he comes out of these fights, like he got beat by Louis Lopez last September, Then this fight, Giovanni Cabrera is not a heavy-handed guy. He sent him down 3 times. And you're like, man, at 22?
Too young.
It's too young for that to happen
exactly.
if you have a real future. Here's one from Mendeli SD. Ask the homie what he thinks of the WBC ranking Thurman as #1 at welterweight, leapfrogging Boots and Vergil. I have a feeling this is going to delay the Bud Spence fight. That's a buzzkill. Wow, what's the BC doing?
What a monkey wrench. I mean, that's politics at its finest right there. And look, the last thing I think Spence and Crawford want to face is Boots, these young studs with Boots and
yeah, and the last thing
Vergil.
the fans want to see is either one of those guys not facing each other immediately.
Exactly. So yeah, that's just politics at play.
Wait, Thurman has literally fought 1 time since he lost to Manny Pacquiao in 2019. He beat a guy that's a blown-up 140.
That's his middle name. One time
a year,
Exactly.
or more like the Olympics, once every 4 years or something. Okay, so you're telling me a victory over a blown-up Mario Barrios, which is your only win in 4 years, that makes you #1 in your sanctioning body.
That's wild, huh? How he's let his career essentially die on the vine like that. That's wild.
The WBC, we be corrupt. Moving on. Here's one from Jose Jr. Has Mario been offered the host of a new dating show after the interview with Sinicia Estrada?
I told you, dude, you kept trying to throw a monkey wrench. I was trying to hook her
It's
up.
the Me Too era. I was just looking out for you.
Me too.
I
wasn't grabbing her. I was merely asking. A lot of people want to know. She's really cute. She's single, and I was trying to find out. By the way, she hit me up afterwards and like, who are you talking about? You got somebody in mind?
Right.
And I like playing Cupid, getting my arrow out and stuff. She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
I wish her nothing but the best. And obviously she's focused, but you know, we all need some loving. Even you, Ken.
When she gets married, you better give away the. You better give her away. Anyway, here's one from Lex.
Glossed right by right there. Okay.
Here's one from Lex.
Not her dad, Claire.
Yeah. Next level boxing talk question: how should Gabe Flores proceed with his career? Should he take a 2-year hiatus to concentrate on building conditioning and skill set while also giving his brain a rest, or just call it a day at the tender age of 22? Mario, I have a question. If you're getting hurt at any stage, but once your punch resistance starts to erode, and that can happen at 22, 32, 42, is there anything that could really reverse it? Is there like a Ponce de Leon, a fountain of youth?
There's not. I mean, obviously you can work on your defense and you can tighten that up a little bit, but it's inevitable you're gonna get touched. And look, I would see how, assuming the kid wants to continue, see how he looks in this next fight, and then assess it from right there. And then you have the come to Jesus and see if this is something he really wants to continue. But
when do you fight? Because I like this idea of the hiatus.
I like the hiatus too. I like at least a good 6 to 9 months, at least. Take a little break. Have a fight with someone that doesn't necessarily have
fighting me, basically. Right. I'm being serious. Be very light.
Have some heavy hands, and see how he looks, assuming his mind's in the right place and he still wants to go, and then assess it from there.
The other thing is, he actually hit Cabrera square a few times, where other fighters, it could turn a fight. He walked right through it. See, it's one thing not to have punch resistance. That's fine. But, like, at least with Berlanga, there's always a threat of him shocking you with one punch.
Right.
I've always said power is something that you are blessed and born with. It is not something you can teach.
Right.
That's the problem.
Same with the chin.
Right. I mean, you can get physically stronger and get your man strength and not really be that much better of a puncher.
Right.
That's the quandary. That's the catch-22 for Gabe Flores Jr. Here's one from Four Corners Boxing. Does Golden Boy have the budget to be a big player with big fights and not just one-sided main events and cards? Seems with the new budget, competitive matches have been less and less. Am I off? Mario, you talked to Mario. What is the feeling on right now, it's been about a week or so, on the Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia situation?
He wants to make that fight. He does want to make that fight. He doesn't feel Ryan can go down to 135 anymore. He just he feels like he's a big kid and he outgrew it. And I think that's going to be the issue. Well, Mayweather came out recently saying,
speaking of a monkey wrench, I mean,
that's a monkey wrench right there. I believe him. He looked bigger, and you saw Ryan in person. He just looks bigger. Some guys just outgrow that weight class. So I don't think it's an excuse. Kid's getting bigger. He's a young guy. I think he's outgrown it. I don't know why Tank wouldn't want to fight him at 140.
He's already been up there.
He's been up there. He's had a victory up there, so it's not like he's never been up there. You're not asking him to do something he hasn't done before. I think it's a bad look on Tank, to be quite honest.
Yeah, but
Mayweather coming out like that, I still think it's a bad look on. I know he's saying with the A side, this and that. Give me another fight where that'll be as lucrative for him. If he's so confident that he's going to beat him, Give me another fight that'll be just as lucrative.
Yeah, that's probably not out there because
That's
look,
my point.
Shakur Stevenson is still relatively unknown in building his career.
By the way, I think he loses that fight.
Yeah, and Devin Haney is one that he's already got his dance card filled. He's going back to Australia in mid-October.
Right.
But here's the issue with Golden Boy. There's a couple of fights out there that I think that they have to make for their own brand. Bivol, Gilberto Ramirez.
Which looks like it's going to happen.
Oh, really?
It does look like all signs point to it right now. They both sides want it, and it looks like it'll happen. That'll be great. Look, if Golden Boy is able to make Bivol in the Zurdo fight, and somehow Garcia and Tank,
they're in business.
they're in business.
They're in business.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Golden Boy, here's one from our boy, the only Sanch. Ask Mr. Monkeypox, Mario Lopez Viva.
Why do I got monkeypox?
One, has he tried Oscar De La Hoya's new vitamins he's endorsing?
Vitamins.
Yeah, by the way, can you hook me up with some? And anyway, and the best live sports moment he attended that wasn't boxing.
I haven't tried his stuff yet. I told that fool to send me something. He said he's going to. So
Hook
I'm
me
gonna
up
try
too,
it.
please.
You want some masculine?
Yes,
All right.
please. Yeah, thanks. On the download.
The best live sporting moment that wasn't boxing, because it was boxing, just in general, right? The best live sporting moment. I'm thinking.
You've been to a lot of Dodger games.
I've been to a lot of Dodger. Can it be UFC?
Yeah,
probably.
you're kind of, yeah.
I'm still in the. It's not boxing.
You're right.
It'd probably be a UFC fight, to be honest with you. That Ngannou fight was like pretty exciting. Those heavyweights was pretty exciting to see that up close and personal. But it's still in that pugilism realm.
Yeah.
So I'll get out of that. Outside of that, probably the Dodgers when they were in that postseason World Series run.
Okay.
See, I was at the shortest game World Series history, the longest game in World Series history, and the hottest game in World Series history. All three. I've been at the records right there. Isn't that crazy?
Coldest?
I haven't been at the coldest because it's here in LA.
Yeah.
So we'll never have the coldest.
For me, the most memorable non-boxing sporting event was probably the 2002 Rose Bowl when Miami actually played in Pasadena against Nebraska. To see Miami actually win a national title in my home city is actually pretty surreal to see them out there. 2001 Hurricanes, greatest team of all time in my view. Moving on
such
to
a weird obsession. I was at the USC game when they played
Texas.
Yeah,
great
that
game.
was a great game.
2006 Rose Bowl.
USC lost that day.
Vince
Vince gave it more to Lendale White that day. I remember Reggie Bush. They were able
wasn't even on the field for 4th and 1.
Stop him. Yeah, but Lendale, and he tried to do that little lateral pass.
No,
remember, but if they would give Lendale Wright was having success.
Yes, and
if
then
they would have gave that to him, that would have. Yeah.
Vince Young was superhuman that game.
He was.
He really was. They couldn't tackle him.
They couldn't tackle him. They couldn't tackle him. Didn't transfer the pros, but yeah.
Moving on to Final Flurries. Before we start out, I want to say one thing. My condolences to the friends and families of Stacy Snyder. She's a photographer out of the Dallas area. I knew her very well. She used to send me all her stuff. I was stunned and really saddened to hear about her passing this past weekend. Again, rest in peace to someone that really loved boxing and someone that was an integral part of the boxing community. She was gone much too soon.
Speaking of sending condolences, shout out to Paul Sorvino, who just passed as we are saying this show. Seems like this whole Goodfellas cast, this Mafia era from Ray Liotta, Paul Sorvino, Paulie Walnuts.
They're sleeping with the clouds. They're sleeping with the clouds.
James Caan, like this era of these gangsters, man. They're just it's.
We haven't talked. What was your favorite James Caan movie?
Was
it Godfather?
Well, I wouldn't classify it as a James Caan movie. That was my favorite character.
Right.
I named my son Santino.
Right.
After his character, Santino.
You'd be surprised, but it has to be sports. It's either the program where he was the coach.
No, it's got to be Misery if you're going to go with James Caan movie, because that was him. Misery with him and
or
Kathy
Rollerball. Loved that as a kid.
Way back, dude.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
way
old
back.
school. I have my VCR tape.
He was also an elf.
That's
Oh,
right.
you're
He's
right.
also an elf. That's right.
Mario, I'm going to call you Sugar Ray Lopez. Every time you say this is it, I'm done, I'm retired, you're making more comebacks than Ray Leonard.
This is it. It's for talking about
this is it.
You're talking about my jiu-jitsu tournament? Yeah, because the last one I got disqualified over some BS. I can't go out on that note. This is it. IBJJF. I have to go to Phoenix. I was so mad, Kim, because I was on weight last week, and then family was in town. I figured I can have a little weekend to relax and party all day Friday. We went to Paradise Cove at the beach. Was drinking all day. And in the sun, you're hanging out. It was a great time. Oof, but you feel it at night. And the next day, I would have rather taken an ass whooping than woke up. But my sister and her family were in town, so we went down to Temecula for the wineries. You know, they got over 50 wineries over there. I like it. It's like Napa Valley, the South. So much fun, man. So we got like the Sprinter van, get a driver. We're hitting up, like we hit like 3 wineries up. You're drinking wine all day. We're playing bocce. Great time. I hit a wall at night, had to sleep. Ended up sleeping like 11 hours. But 2 days in a row, back-to-back drinking in the sun catches up with you. Sunday, we went to Mariscos, our place. Had some modelos and all that. It's funny because my son, when I was at the beach, he says, Dad, come on, play with us. All you like to do is lay down and drink modelos. Yeah. So I said, all right. So he made me laugh, so I got up and started playing with him right there. But anyway, just those 3 days, dude, I gained 7 pounds. I couldn't believe it. So now I got to lose, and after training this morning, I'm only 5 pounds overweight, but I'm so mad. I got to lose 5 pounds by Saturday. So I'm going to be grumpy. I got to dial it in. And then this should be the last one. I'm too busy, too old for this crap to be competing. I just want to go on a high note and not win or lose. I don't want to get DQ'd. But
as Dana White said, doing well. You're fucking 50.
That's exactly right. Dana White, to quote him. But then that should be it. And it's in Phoenix where it's going to be like 120 degrees. Literally. But then that's it. Punch me in the face. I want you to punch me in the face if I say I'm going to do another one after this.
I can do it. I'll do it. I'll take you up on that offer.
I bet you will.
Now, in jiu-jitsu, in these tournaments, you literally have to weigh in as you're fighting or getting ready to fight. None of the 24-hour
Not only do you weigh in and then you go fight, but hold on. You weigh in with the gi. The gi is a little karate outfit that, that white thing, or you can wear it in different colors. That weighs about 4 to 4.5 pounds. Okay? So you got to factor that in to your weight. So it's a pain in the butt. It's totally not.
Now, as it relates to the gi, do people make lighter gis?
They do.
Because in NASCAR, the way they have lighter parts.
However, with the lighter gi, your opponent is more of an advantage because the way you can grab it, it's easier to grab. It's easier to hold.
The other one,
it's about the grip, and it's all about the grip there. So, yes, you have an advantage with the weight, but you're giving a little bit of an advantage with the grip. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so I don't want to have to do that, but I will if I can't make the weight, because I'm not going to go out there and not make it. But I'm pretty good. I'm going to make the weight.
All right. And Mario, you finished the offer.
In the face. Punch in the face. If I say I'm going to do it again, okay?
Oh, that's what I was going to aim for regardless. What did you think of the offer?
Dude, I love the offer. About the making of The Godfather was fantastic. I highly recommend it. But it got me thinking. I was talking to Fraser about it earlier, too. So that was in The Godfather, which is considered like one of the greatest films, right, of all time. That was in 1972, 73. And then on the heels, they made Godfather 2. But in that movie, they talk about all the movies they're making at that time, right? The Godfather, Serpico, The Deliverance, French Canal, all these movies. And you're hearing Bob Evans, who plays the lead studio, how all these movies have to have a compelling story. You have to have a message. You have to something to say they're from books. Cut to, we were doing the radio show earlier. Dude, there's like 39 Marvel movies coming out next year. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no more of these great storytelling. It made me think as I'm watching the show.
Cookie cutter.
Dude,
it's Chips Ahoy.
Cookie cutter.
It's Chips Ahoy.
It's so bad.
Not even Bacher's cookies.
I mean, once in a while, for the kids, my kid likes those. That's fine. But bro, there's nothing else like these high quality movies anymore. They're not getting made like that anymore. It's really sad. It got me thinking that's an era, but we really dumbed down society.
They're not selling stories anymore. They're selling products.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a brand.
It's a brand.
It's
sad. It's sad. That's a bygone era.
A series that I'm watching is on Vice called Dark Side of the 90s. And
you like the dark side. You did the dark side with you're a depressed dude.
No,
you like the dark side with the wrestling stuff, and now the dark side. Well, what was the dark side of the 90s?
The 90s is about culturally important things that happen, either from like Cops, tabloid news, TV. The show Cops.
Oh, Cops, the show Cops.
They actually had a 2-part series on the rise of the UFC. And they actually did one on the Viper Room where a picture of you was there because one of the photographers, that friend of yours, you're sitting next to him.
Yeah.
And so, I guess you could tell some stories of the Viper Room about how important that was for about, 2 years? That was the big place to be.
Yeah, a couple more years than that.
Yeah, and so it's a series that they did, and I'm catching up to it, but they have 7 or 8 chapters about what was important in the 90s.
I remember Biggie and Tupac got shot in the 90s.
Yep.
There was a lot of, for me, musically in the 90s, this is how I categorize it. Early 90s were really a lot of grunge, and that's the Nirvana,
91.
Pearl Jam, and then it started getting into Stone Temple Pilots and Tool, and all, there was a lot of grunge, and then country was huge. I remember Garth Brooks was the biggest thing.
Heart was a huge
get out of my face with the Achy Breaky.
I'm
talking about
real
Garth Brooks was selling out stadiums.
Music, man.
Do you remember that? You might be too young, Fraser, but Garth Brooks was huge. He was the biggest artist, I think, technically in the 90s. But
I am too young, but I do know.
And then I used to actually go to cowboy bars or country western bars, line dancing. For In Cahoots and Denim and Diamonds, $5 all you can drink. A lot of hot chicks, and you can dance with them. And it wasn't about picking them up; it was just about like having a good time dancing. But country was huge. And then I remember hip hop and R&B was like at its peak. Yeah. So that's how I look at it. It was like grunge and like kind of like that alt rock, or was it? Would you call that art rock or like that grunge rock? I guess. Yeah. And then country became huge, and then hip hop and 90s started getting big, and then the rise of the boy bands. Yes. That's how I feel the 90s are musically.
Yeah, another chapter they did was how important Arsenio Hall was. I mean, for a 4-year stretch, man, he was like the Black Carson. Another thing, the one that I saw last one was I didn't realize in the mid or early to mid 90s, there were all sorts of black sitcoms. I mean, they were big, and in fact, networks.
Living Signal was the original Friends,
and then it was Martin.
Martin was
a big one, but they also started networks like the WB and UPN.
That's right,
based on the popularity.
LL Cool J had a sitcom there too. Remember
and one of the worst ideas ever was Homeboys in Outer Space, but they said no, hold our beer. The Diaries of Desmond Pfeiffer.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, who cleared this? And that lasted about 15 minutes.
Remember Robert Townsend?
Yes.
Hollywood Shuffle?
Yes, Hollywood Shuffle. Was great movie.
Too. That was great.
Also,
that was a great movie.
In part of that show, it talked about how impactful In Living Color was.
Yeah.
In Living Color, the first 2 years I thought was as good as any comedy sketch show in the history of that genre.
Yeah.
And they spawned off a bunch of stars.
Jim Carrey was the token white guy.
And he was the biggest one. That's the ironic part about it. Anyway, enjoy yourself this week for your last jiu-jitsu tournament, the Rolling Stones here of combat sports. Anyway, on behalf of Mario Lopez, Smoking Tim Frazier, Justin Buffalo Knuckles, and Tino on the edits, goodbye, everybody.